A growing nation of genetically evolved apes, led by Caesar, is threatened by a band of human survivors of the devastating virus unleashed a decade earlier. This is my review of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. So if you guys haven't seen my review for Rise of the Planet of the Apes, then you should know that I thought that Rise of the Planet of the Apes was a really surprising movie for me, and I thought it was a really great movie as well. So when I heard that they were making another Planet of the Apes movie, I was really excited because I wanted to see where it would go from the previous movie. And I was so excited for the movie that I put on my top 15 most anticipated movies of this year. And after seeing it with my dad, I have to tell you guys that I thought that Dawn of the Planet of the Apes was a really great movie. The good points. Even though the acting, directing, and writing were phenomenal in this movie, I don't think that those three aspects are the highlight of this movie. I think the highlight of this movie is the visual effects. And not just the regular visual effects. I thought that the motion capture visual effects were done extremely well. And I say that because when there were close-ups of a ape's face, or when there were a group of apes in a scene, or when there was just one ape on the screen, the ape looked very, very realistic. And so realistic to the point where when there were close-ups on the face, you could see their wrinkles and their crevices on the face and everything. And when I saw on the screen, I was like, wow, this doesn't look like visual effects at all. This looks like a real ape. So whoever did the motion capture visual effects and the regular visual effects, I say job well done, because you deserve an award for this. The next best thing about this movie is the performances by Andy Serkis and Toby Kebbell. Now, Andy Serkis returns from Rise of the Planet of the Apes to play Caesar again in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and he does a really good job, as always, in his motion capture performance. But Andy Serkis isn't the only one that did a great job. Another person that did a great job in motion capture was Toby Kebbell, who played Koba as a supporting role, and he was phenomenal as Serkis was in this movie. And I'll say right now that I think that Andy Serkis did a better job in this movie than he did in the last movie, because even though he has more lines of dialogue in this movie, I think he realizes that he still has to be a ape sort of, and convey his emotions through movement and facial expressions and the noises that he makes. And I think that Toby Kebbell took a page from Andy Serkis and did what he did and convey his emotions mostly through body movement or facial expressions. But as for the scenes that were done with speaking, I thought they were done well too, because they conveyed a lot of emotion through their voice. And the apes in this movie can't really speak perfect English, and they don't speak every word in the vocabulary, but they can still speak. And I thought that the rest of the cast did a good job as well, which included the human cast and the people that played the ape cast as well. Jason Clarke was good, Gary Oldman was good, Kerry Russell was good, the person that played Caesar's son was good. The next best thing about this movie is the directing by Matt Reeves. So Rupert Wyatt didn't return to direct this movie because he had to do something else, I believe, but they brought on Matt Reeves, and before this movie he directed Cloverfield, and I really liked Cloverfield. I thought it was a really good movie. And after seeing the movie, I believe that his directing in this movie was better than Rupert Wyatt's directing in Rise of the Planet of the Apes. And I say that because I felt that this movie was a little bit more suspenseful and more intense thing than the last movie was. And not only that, I thought that Matt Reeves did a better job with directing the dramatic and the action scenes in this movie than Rupert Wyatt did in the last movie. Another good point about this movie is the writing. And when I'm talking about the writing, I'm talking about the storyline of the movie. And when this movie began, I thought that it was going to be something like Avatar or Dances with Wolves, where it's a person from the human group is going to go over to the ape group to understand their culture and to see if they can get along with one another, each of the groups, so that there's no war, but eventually there will be war. But it didn't an out that way, because the storyline took some different paths that I didn't expect in a way, and it was sort of a variation of an Avatar or a Dances with Wolves movie. Another good thing about the movie is the use of dialogue for the apes. And I think that the writers knew that they didn't want the apes to speak every word from the dictionary, because they knew that the ape nation was still growing and their minds were still growing, and they couldn't really speak every word yet. So when the writers decided to use certain dialogue scenes at certain moments, it felt right. It didn't feel rushed at any moment to use those dialogue scenes. It didn't feel not right. It felt right. And the final thing I'll say about the writing is how the characters are written in the movie. Because they're written in a way where they're relatable, or you're rooting for them, or you can understand the decisions they make in the movie. Up next for the good points is the cinematography. I thought the cinematography and camera shots in this movie were really done well. And there's a few moments in this movie where Matt Reeves decided to do one takes, and I thought the one takes in this movie were done well, and I thought the cinematography for those one takes were done well too. For the most part, I thought that the editing and pacing were done well. There wasn't a moment in this movie where I felt like a scene in the movie was being rushed, or I didn't feel like a scene was out of place in the movie. So all I can say is whoever edited this movie did a good job. Another good thing about this movie is the sound design, because when I was watching the movie, when there were like apes like doing their ape sounds on screen, at moments it sounded like the apes were actually inside the movie theater, and I thought it was like some like audience member to my left like trying to like mimic an ape, and I was like, what the heck's going on over there? And I looked over and there's like no one making ape sounds. Like, oh, it must have been the movie. And if you can make it sound like that there's an ape inside my movie theater, then you did something really good. I thought that the score of the movie was done really well too. If you watch the original Planet of the Apes movie, then you can tell that in this movie there are a few hints of the original music from the original Planet of the Apes in this movie. But really the full score was done well. I thought that the score fitted well with the entire movie. And the final good thing I have to say about this movie is the production design. Because in the city of San Francisco, it felt like it had this post-virus, apocalyptic feel to it, and it sort of had a Last of Us feel to it. You know the video game Last of Us, if you played it? It sort of had that feel to it. And not only was the production design good for the city, I thought it was good for the ape village as well. Because when I saw the ape village for the first time, it looked like something that the apes would actually build to make their home. The bad points. The only complaint I can come up with about this movie is some of the writing for the supporting characters in this movie. Because after I watched the movie, I was trying to come up with something that I didn't like about the movie, and at first I couldn't come up with anything. But then I was like, those supporting characters, well, some of them could have been written a little bit better. And by written a little bit better, I mean like feel like they have a place in this movie. Because when I was looking back on those supporting characters in the movie, it didn't feel like they had a place in this movie. So like I said, I saw this movie with my dad. My dad gives this movie a 3.25 out of 4 stars, while I give a 3.75 out of 4 stars. I think it is just slightly better than Rise of the Planet of the Apes, but I still think it still had a flaw to it. If you're a fan of action, adventure, of the Planet of the Apes franchise, of sci-fi movies, then I think you'll like this movie. Just make sure to watch the first movie, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, first before seeing this movie. Alright, spoilers for Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. If you haven't seen this movie yet, then get out of here now, because I'm going to be spoiling some stuff in the movie, and I don't know why you want to be spoiled and go to a movie theater and like, oh hey, this moment's going to come next, and that moment, because I want you to be surprised when you see this movie. So like I said before in the good points, I thought that the writing was good because it didn't go the route of like an Avatar movie or a Dances with Wolves movie. Yeah, I thought the character Jason Clarke played was going to be like in one of those roles where he like binds the peace between the two groups, and he sort of does, but he doesn't do it because he wants peace. He's doing it because he wants to make sure that his family's safe. Another thing is that in the trailers, it made it seem like Gary Oldman was going to be like the bad guy in this movie, but he's actually not a bad guy. And I say it because you understand the decisions he's making and everything. Because when they only have a week of power left, and he's like trying to like decide what he's trying to do, like either like have no power for the rest of the colony, or go up to like the mountains or the forest and kill off the apes so that they can get to the dam. Like he's thinking like kill the apes so they can get the power from the dam. And if you were in his position, in his shoes, you would understand and think like the same thing, like yeah, kill the apes because they're like between us and power. And he sort of understands his decision later on in the movie when he kills himself, when he's trying to kill all the apes, because he has nothing left to lose. And he, like, even though Jason Clarke's characters, like, tell him, like, no, Caesar's up there to, like, stop Copa right now and stop this, like, war. And he's like, no, I'm just seeing, like, these apes coming at us first and trying to attack us first, so I'm gonna kill them all before the rest of the human race is extinct. Speaking of Copa, let's talk about him. Yeah, so Toby Kebbell did a fantastic job as Koba, like I said before, and you sort of understand like where he's coming from. Yeah, even though he tried to kill Caesar, like you still understand where he's coming from because he has been tortured, like in lab experiments and everything, from the humans when he was in the labs. And he sees no good in the humans. Like, he doesn't understand why Caesar is trying to make peace with the humans at all. And if he were in his shoes, he would have the same mindset because he'd be thinking that humans are no good. Alright, the final thing I want to spoil is the ending. So I've heard from people that during the credits, there's no post-credit scene, but I've heard that there's like audio during the credits, and you can hear something as if it's like going through something, and then you hear an ape sound, and I don't know if that's real or not because I didn't stick around for the credits of the movie, and I haven't heard from anyone else. But there's a few people that said that there was like audio during the credits, and does that mean like Koba is alive? To be honest, I wouldn't like if Koba was in the next movie, and I say that because he has nowhere else to go. Like his story arc is over with, I think. I mean, the only crazy storyline I would come up with is like if Koba was working with the humans trying to get rid of the apes. And the only reason that Koba is working with the humans is so that he can get rid of Caesar and become like the leader of the apes, and so that Koba can get control of the apes forever. But I don't think that's going to happen because I think the next movie is going to be strictly focused on this war between the humans and the apes. And the scene at the end like gave me chills, like when Jason Clarke's character and Caesar were talking to each other, and yeah, that like when they were like talking back and forth, that gave me chills. And then when Jason Clarke's character like moved away and went into the shadows, and when Caesar looked behind and didn't see him anymore and turned around to see all the apes like kneeling before him, and when the like close-up is happening on his face and it goes to black, it's like, oh my god, I can't wait for the next movie. So that's my review for Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Hope you guys liked it. And other than that, that's it.